I told my dad not to scare me, as once in a while he would play tricks on me. He said it wasn't him, and showed me that he couldn't even reach the carpet with his foot, even stretched out part way off the couch. We were both freaked out. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to yet another episode of Your Ghost Stories. Or perhaps you're new here, in which case, welcome to the show. This week, I'll be reading a story from a guy named Josh, who reached out to the show through the website. Before we get started, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to each and every one of you for making this show what it is. We've now spent a few weeks in the top 100 UK Apple Podcast charts in the documentary category, which is absolutely crazy and it's really hard to believe. This podcast is completely independent with no funding or source of income. In fact, it costs money from my own pocket to keep the podcast running. I'm just super passionate about speaking to our wonderful guests and putting these stories out there for you guys to enjoy. And it's also a wonderful feeling seeing how fast the podcast is growing, completely organically. It's really motivating. So thank you, my friends. It means a lot that you're choosing to stick around and listen. I guess we must be doing something right. If you're enjoying the show, you can help us continue to grow by simply hitting follow on whichever platform you're listening on. It helps more than you know. Then, as we continue to get bigger, we can expand the production and I'll have more time and resources to find amazing guests and keep sharing these awesome stories. Let's get on with the show and dive into Josh's story.
Your ghost story. Your ghost story.
Hey folks, I've had a couple of things happen to me that I guess would be considered sort of ghost related. When I was a kid, I used to live across the street from a cemetery. Not sure if that matters or if it's related, but it's always on my mind. As most kids are, I was scared of the basement. It always gave me a creepy vibe. It was dark and poorly lit, even with the lights on. I had a toy chest down there that was visible from the top of the staircase, and my favourite toy at the time was a fire truck made out of plastic. I once went down to get the fire truck and noticed my toy chest was open. I then noticed the fire truck appeared to be suspended in the air, maybe a couple of feet higher than the toy chest. It moved in a swift back and forth motion, much like how a small child would play with a toy car. And then it smashed hard on the ground and was shattered into several pieces. It scared me a lot. Another instance of something I remember is maybe a week or so of hearing noises in the living room in the middle of the night. One night, I heard very loud slapping sounds coming from the living room, and I went to investigate. Hold up, Josh. Is this turning into an erotic novel here? I guess there's only one way to find out. Let's continue on. My mother usually had a neat stack of maybe 10 magazines on the coffee table. They were scattered around as if they'd been tossed around. I knew it was odd, as my mum was very tidy. I went and got her to come take a look, and when I brought her back, the magazines were all stacked perfectly, as they had been before. My mother and father were divorced, and my dad lived in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. It's the hardest thing about reading out people's stories. Note to self, stop getting distracted. I'm sorry guys, I'm really ruining the vibe of this story, aren't I? Anyway, so his dad lived somewhere on Vancouver Island. He rented a lady's basement. I went and visited him again, and I had a feeling of being uncomfortable, despite it being a nice walkout basement. One night, We were sitting in front of the fireplace, with the fire going. There was a couch placed back away from the fire, and a large carpet in between the couch and fireplace. All of a sudden, the room got cold, and the hair stood up on the back of my neck. A big ripple went through the carpet, from right to left. It scared me. I told my dad not to scare me, as once in a while he would play tricks on me. He said it wasn't him, and showed me that he couldn't even reach the carpet with his foot, even stretched out part way off the couch. We were both freaked out. Apparently, about a year later, the lady who owned the home found a baby skeleton in her garden. They discovered that the house had been built on a Native American burial site after the yard was excavated. I've had a few other strange things happen, a lot of it, oddly enough, as a child, but I still remember them well. These experiences opened my mind to the paranormal, and throughout my childhood, and still to this day, I have a great interest in aliens, ghosts, Sasquatch, and so on.
Your ghost stories. Your ghost stories.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories with us here on Your Ghost Stories. I do apologise about ruining the vibe of your story and potentially accusing one of your family members of doing something with those slapping sounds. But, I'm not going to lie to you, mate. It didn't sound good. I mean, in my head, I just assumed your mum was up to something. But, you said you got your mum and you brought her in the room. And I assume nobody else was in the house at the time. In which case, that is absolutely crazy. And how can you explain that? You also mentioned at the end that you had quite a lot of experiences as a child. Now, I don't think you're alone there because a lot of people have, including myself. I think my personal opinion on this, I believe kids probably have some kind of sixth sense. And as we grow older in the Western world, then I think we start to lose touch with our spiritual side. It's absolutely crazy how many stories there are of kids talking about things they've seen, or talking about even past lives. If you're listening and you're new here to Your Ghost Stories, I'd really encourage you to go back through our previous episodes. I mean, there's only about 30 odd. But yeah, go back through our episodes because we've spoke to some experts, we've spoke to some really amazing people that have a great insight, and they're way more articulate than I am and much more intelligent than I am. So they have a much better understanding about what could be going on. Like I said, I had lots of experiences as a child as well. If you listen to our first ever episode, which is titled Host Stories, you can listen to them all there. I know this episode here is a little bit different to what we normally do, but like I said at the start, this podcast takes a lot of work to secure guests, edit the shows, and everything else in between, let alone balancing personal life and my music career. But, ladies and gentlemen, I am very happy to tell you, we do have some really exciting guests lined up in the coming weeks, including exorcist and astral traveller Alabar Jones, and I can promise you, this one is going to be fascinating. So please be sure to hit follow and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. One last thing before I go, I'd love to hear any thoughts and feedback you have about the show, so I can take it on board and make changes moving forward to make the show as entertaining, fun, and as engaging as it can be. You can send your thoughts to me directly at yourghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com, or you can leave us a review on Spotify or Apple, just like some of you already have. I'm proud to say we've only had 5-star reviews thus far. Until next week, sweet dreams.